Okay, this is Cone and PD James Cone Alm. He's a good friend of mine, and PD is a recent friend of mine. He's a bit younger than I am, but he's recording this conversation, okay, because we're having a conversation about generally UFOs and aliens, okay? Now, we're going to get to the bottom of things. I'm getting the sense that I'm going to be channeling information about aliens and UFOs in this conversation. Now, this is going to be posted on the YouTube video, I'm assuming, in due time, once we edit it and everything. Now, the first thing that I want to say, which I've already said just a few minutes ago, but it's not on this recording yet, is that people who talk about UFOs are ridiculed. The minute you start talking about aliens or UFOs, people automatically start rolling their eyes like you're crazy, like you're delusional, like you're a nutcase. You can't be talking about that stuff, otherwise they lock you up, especially if you say you've been incarnating aboard UFOs, right? That's just crazy talk to most people. The government has done a very, very good job of disinformation campaigns, of ridiculing people and cover-ups that are just like extraordinary. Now, here's the thing though, okay, even though the government of the United States and everything officially denies and ridicules anyone who talks about UFOs, they also, but the thing is, 90%, I'm going to repeat that again because it's so important, 90% of Americans believe that we're being visited by aliens and UFOs. 90%. So are 90% of the people delusional because they believe we're being visited by UFOs and aliens? I don't think so. I think it's the government is the problem here, right? And the disinformation campaign in the media. That's the problem that we're facing here. And like I was just saying, I'm going to repeat it again. I've been seeing a lot of UFOs over the past 6 months or so above Chico, California. Big metallic objects just slowly traversing the sky. You know, from southwest to northeast. There's this particular, and they do this at particular times, right? Like just before sunset, there's clouds that form going in a southwest to northeast direction in the sky, and then these UFOs appear along the cloud line, right? Of these clouds that have formed, going in that direction. But see, there's no, Chico, California does not lay on any major airline type of route that goes southwest to northeast, right? It simply doesn't work like that. We're Eastland and Northeast land in California, North California, where there should be no jet airliners going over. And these are not regular jets because these are huge metal objects that slowly move. These are not high-flying, very fast jets. These are definitely UFOs. Now, this one woman named Hareen, who I met in the chat room several months ago, says that she's been incarnating in a multi-dimensional kind of way aboard UFOs. Now, immediately I started to think that this woman was crazy, right? I was like the rest of the population who just thinks this is all nutcase stuff. I thought she was crazy or something, but then she started talking, and she was making sense. She was making perfect sense. And she said, Daniel, you know what? I saw you the other day aboard one of the UFOs. You were dressed in a cape and you were teaching people how to overcome fear. And I said, wow, is that right? But see, I'm not consciously knowledgeable of what I'm doing aboard these so-called UFOs. Yeah, the Area 51, by the way, is in Nevada, which is southeast of Northern California. I'm due west of northern Nevada. And so these UFOs and aliens, they're real, okay? Take my word for it, they are real. They're not the fictional stuff of Hollywood, even though there's a lot of good Hollywood fictional stories like Contact, Independence Day, War of the Worlds. I could go on and on. Like, there's so many of them. Why don't you name a few of those movies? I haven't seen them all.
I know like Prometheus, Aliens, Alien vs Predator, all of them. E.T. I know there's lots of alien movies.
And Cone, what is the official government view in Russia about UFOs? Cone is from Russia, for those who don't know yet.
Basically, it's the same as the United States government, but the question of UFOs is not that topical in Russia. They don't talk about it normally on television. There are occasional TV programs about UFOs, and I think Russians are more calm about that. But when you talk to government officials, they try to hush it up, and I think it's natural for governments to hush everything that is too out there, too unbalanced, because it makes the situation less predictable in terms of ruling a country. It's like rocking a boat, and they don't want this boat to be rocked too much. That's it. Over to you.
Yeah, and not to bash the government here. Like, I'm not one of these anti-government people, but I understand their position, right? Because I was a security guard, which it's a low-paying, low-status job, but it's in the realm of like prison guard, security, police officer, right? Like an official. Now, what do you think of a police officer? You generally don't think of like weird things, or like tabloid stuff. You think of someone who's serious, sober, somber, clear-minded, rational, like that, right? So that's why when people see UFOs, if a housewife or a college frat kid sees a UFO, no one cares. But the minute a cop sees a UFO and reports it, then that's different, right? Because this is a cop we're talking about. It's a government official.
Yes, more weight is given to every report that comes from a mouth of a government person, like most importantly, like a fighter pilot who reports seeing some unidentifiable object. And I think there is a corpus of a massive amount of information coming from such sources, massive enough for people to tip the balance towards believing that UFO exists for an average person. To me, there is no question about it. Over.
Yeah. And let's say President Obama did a national address, right? Like the weekly address that he does on radio or television or whatever. Now imagine he just said, imagine him coming on camera in front of millions of people and saying like flat out just stating, yes, I know that aliens exist. They've contacted us in the White House. I've seen them. I've talked to them. I've been aboard one of their ships. Imagine him saying something like that, right? You can't imagine that.
You've got to foresee consequences of such an announcement. Most ground-swelling consequence will be change that religions have to take. They will have to swallow it, and they will have to change their core tenets, and it will shake the structure of society. So that's I think the primary reason why they want to introduce it, but they want to introduce it slowly. Over.
let's talk about crop circles for a minute here. Do you guys think that crop circles are related to these UFOs? Like in Russia, is there many crop circles? Like they seem to always appear in the UK, right? Or maybe some Western European country. But what about Russia?
There have been a few reports about crop circles in Russia. Again, it's not that big news. As far as crop circles are concerned, I have no idea how they appear, and I had to take words from other sources. And what those sources say is that this is a configuration of fields that come from Earth consciousness and alien consciousness. So it's in their opinion, it's a mixture of both alien and Earth consciousness that creates these crop circles, and these are like messages. If you learn to understand them, you can learn the meaning of these crop circles. What's interesting to me also is the sheer mechanics, how this happens, what makes this grass to lay in such a formation, what force makes it so, and how it happens. I'd like to see a footage of that. Over to you.
Yeah, and what do you think of the hoaxes? Like how many, obviously a lot of the crop circles, they're obviously hoaxes, right? Like, you know, the old stereotypical story of a couple of drunk guys at 3 in the morning with a board and a string, walking around in a circle and having a good time partying up, drinking beer, you know, doing crop circles. But you see, some of these crop circles are so extravagant and formed in the middle of the night without lights or anything, right? Within a very short period of time, like vast, elaborate symbols, right? How's that possible for a couple of drunk guys, right? It doesn't make any sense.
Exactly, and it's akin to these pictures, so to speak, in I think in Peru, in a desert, where you can see a whole picture only from a bird's eye view, and these are, I think you sure know them, and these are very ancient pictures, and who in their right mind would create such pictures? Because nobody could see them then, but still they exist since millennia, and these are also symbols of something beyond earthly existence. Over.
I just prayed and God wanted me to talk about Tunguska. That's that place in Siberia, because you probably know a bit more about it than I do. Or maybe not, maybe I know more about it than you do. I was like 1920s or so, or like 1909, when there was a massive explosion, like a celestial explosion in the atmosphere that blew down like massive amounts of trees and everything in somewhere in Siberia. Do you remember that?
Sure, I watched a few documentaries about Tunguska meteorite, and these were quite detailed investigation of the event, but still nobody could come up with a definitive conclusion about it. And I also listened to sessions of people who channeled, and I was always keeping in the back of my mind a hope that somebody would ask this question about Tunguska meteorite, but nobody so far asked this question. And it's an extraordinary event, of course, but as to the true nature of it, I have only two explanations. Either it was a meteorite which exploded, maybe because there was a core of water that instantly turned into vapor, maybe, I don't know, or it could have been an alien ship or something that comes from another dimension, like a wormhole opened and some energy came into being here in the on the Earth environment, and it thankfully, thank God it happened not in a densely populated area. Over.
Okay, let me ask this, Colin or PD, have you personally seen something that you definitely know to be a UFO?
I've never seen anything like that in my life, but I live in Australia.
I have. It was in my dream, but I knew that it was a UFO.
Okay, God wants me to talk more about these Nazca lines. Is that the right term for it? Nazca? Or Nazteca or something in Peru there? I know there's a Lake Titicaca, right? Close by, a very high lake. It's something like 8,000 feet above sea level. And Colin, do you have the cattle mutilation phenomenon in Russia ever?
Yes, and I even saw a footage, a video that was broadcast on television, showing a cow that was mutilated. Over.
Interesting. How about you, PD, in Australia?
I've never seen that, but even still, if a cow did get mutilated, it's like, I don't know, I'm not sure how you can tell the difference if like a human did it or an alien.
Well, apparently it's because there's like incision lines made by lasers, right? It's not just like a knife and a razor blade or something. These are like lasers that are cutting through flesh and burning it, right? Like lasers cutting off chunks of flesh and everything. So that's how they determine that it's not human who's doing these things.
So like the same type of technology which all the ancient architecture they thought was built with, because they couldn't figure out any way they could get such clean precision without like laser beams and stuff like that, and all the ancient buildings around the world.
Yeah, which brings us to the Great Pyramid. I've always been fascinated by the Great Pyramid in Egypt, Giza Plateau, where the Sphinx is located. Some people say that it's impossible that slaves working, for 20 years, like hauling massive, like 20, 50, 100-ton blocks on wooden logs, right? They say that's impossible because we try to do that nowadays and we can't do it. We can't even build a 20-foot high pyramid by hand. was slaves. They tried it in Egypt, right, to build a small pyramid like that. They couldn't even do that. But the Great Pyramid, that's like a kilometer high above the ground or so. Or no, maybe not that high, but you get the point. And it's so mathematically precise too. Like you said, the lasers, it's so aligned perfectly to north, south, and the angles are all perfect. And the deviance is like only a couple millimeters per like 100 feet or so, right? It's like so small that it's negligible. Now you try like building a building like that in modern era, they can't do it. There's only 2 cranes on the entire planet Earth that can lift blocks of stone that would be in the Great Pyramid, right? Just 2 of them, that's it. So we can't even duplicate what the apparent, what the Egyptians apparently did. So what do you guys think here? Did the UFO alien type beings come to Earth and build the Great Pyramids? Or, like in the movie Stargate, remember that with Kurt Russell? Or do you think that us humans, right, just us humans, we're so advanced at one point that we could just move blocks with our mind? Do you think it was something like that?
Well, I think the biggest question there is whether the whole story of the Bible was true at the start, when it says that angels fell from heaven, and when they mated with the women of Earth, they bore giants. So they could have been giants back in that day, which could be able to move all that, and had all the ancient wisdom and knowledge how to make all them lasers. And at the same time, what was I thinking of? So it's either them giants which knew how to do all that, or aliens feel that must have been around. What the fuck was I thinking?
This is Straight Talk, brought to you, Straight Talk of UFOs with P.D. James and Konam, discussing today UFO phenomenon, and this is a commercial break. Oh, thank heaven for 7-Eleven. I just got a big gulp from 7-Eleven. Now I expect 7-Eleven to donate to my worldpeaceprayervision.org because I gave them a free plug. I think Independence Day was my favorite UFO movie. But it was more than a UFO movie. It was like an end of the world. I've always been into end of the world type of stuff, right? Like movies, books. It's part of my upbringing. Like, during the Cold War. I know, Peter, you're too young for that. You're only like 20 or 1920. I'm 41. I remember the Cold War. So does Cole. We had the specter of nuclear war. We always thought it could erupt at any time and everything. Now, Independence Day is not a it is a nuclear war type movie too, because there's nuclear wars detonating in the movie. But these big ships, the UFOs come in and start destroying New York City and Washington D.C. and Los Angeles, and it's kind of like a doomsday flick and a UFO flick at the same time. But I must have seen that movie 20 times so far. Is this one of those Hollywood blockbusters that you just really love,
Well, back to the fallen angel thing. Like, we'll say if the fallen angels did come down and they were had all the wisdom of God and all that kind of thing, well, they either were around and built all the pyramids and then either built UFOs and left, or they either got died out here on Earth, because there's numerous giant skeletons which have been found around the world, which the Vatican and government go to great lengths to cover up and make sure as soon as one's found, they shut the person off, and then they hide all the bones of these giants which used to be on Earth and destroy them. So that story from the start of the Bible could have some truth to it with that, but maybe it's just I don't know, like there was, I guess the fallen angel thing or aliens, either way.
Some could say that they're one and the same thing, right? Because some people say that they have seen angels like Michael aboard UFOs, but these are benign angels, like the good ones on the side of God. The whole fallen fallen angel thing is a different topic altogether. We could probably make an entire show on fallen angels. Now, I've been called a fallen angel, right? Like, you know, people have accused me of that. Um, but I'm on the side of God. I'm on the side of God's grace. So I'm not one of these evil, demonic ones who want to destroy the planet Earth or something. You know how they're demonized like that. You see, Hollywood. Just a note on the fallen angel thing. Like movies like Dogma or City of Angels, and you know, like the ones about fallen angels, right? Like those kind of movies, they make human angels, give them a bad name, because people they have all this fear and loathing about incarnate angels because they assume that they're all fallen angels.
Yeah, and with the fallen angel thing, or the reptilian, all the alien like stories like that, you know, that's what the Illuminati bloodlines. They all believe they go back to the days of Egypt, you know, or back to times when maybe these fallen angels came and did mate with women, and they believe that their blood is related to them, and they keep the bloodline. And that's what most of the people, which the evil people, which do all these horrible things with no empathy, are pretty much maybe related to these people.
Indeed, that's very possible. Can't discount anything like.
Oh yeah, you can't discount anything, but hopefully one day we'll be able to discount some things and get to some kind of truth.
Which brings me to the reptilians. What do you think of reptilian? When you hear reptilian, what do you think of? When I hear of reptilian, I think of David Icke, right? He's into this whole reptilian stuff. He thinks like half the population of the world is somehow reptilian. What does that mean to you?
Well, I think the reptilian is like reptiles, serpent. Like back in the days, there used to be lots of people called that like cultures which believed in there were serpent people around, and I think it all comes back like the devil was a serpent, and then the fallen angels, you know, it all goes back to the same story, you know, a long time ago where there was these people around which weren't from Earth, and they were around. So that if all these cultures, you know, from all around the world had the same kind of story, you know, just like different names, reptilians, serpent people, fallen angels, you know, it all comes back to like the same like main thing.
Okay, I just prayed to God to give me a new direction for this conversation. I'm told to now talk about contrails. Okay, those are those high-flying aircraft who leave big crisscrosses of of jet trails, like that are actually chemicals, and they fly overhead and they crisscross the sky until the sky gets cloudy because of their jet trails. Things like that happen all the time. I remember seeing that a lot in Boise, Idaho, when I lived there in 1999. That was really big in that time. I haven't really seen too many contrails. I've seen a few of them in Chico, California, but not too many of them. Do you guys see any of them at all?
Well, I rarely ever see any contrails, but I see chemtrails for all the time, like most weeks and sometimes like every day around here, and pretty much it's just got a lot of chemicals, you know, poisoning the soil, poisoning the water with all these chemicals, mainly aluminium, and it's also got nanoparticles in it, I believe, like so they can eventually go into humans and then all over the world make everything with nanoparticles and then be able to control it all with rays and frequencies, which goes together with HAARP, which is another thing like in conjunction with chemtrails, which is used to maybe like heat up the atmosphere or global cooling, you know, just to be able to gain control of the weather and own that.
weather. God has given me the ability to clear overcast skies, not once in a while, but all the time, right? Anytime it's cloudy, all I have to do is say the word and it'll clear up. So that's why God's been allowing me to do this, is to show signs and wonders, to prove God, basically. But see, that's the benign, nice guy route to proving God, right? Clearing an overcast sky, it's no big deal, right? It's pleasant, the sun is shining and everything. And on the other hand, what if I were to tell you that I know who, there was a group of angels who actually destroyed New Orleans with Hurricane Katrina, right? To show wrath of God kind of thing. That's not a very benign way to prove God, is it?
Well, maybe they worship, I don't know, the dark side of God, or Satan, and they were kind of dark angels.
Okay, let me ask you, just briefly on the subject of angels here. Do you think there's an all-out war between bad angels and good angels continuously going on? Or do you think that all angels, or most of them at least, are sort of on the side of God and they have a role to fulfill, even if it's destroying cities, right? Like, for instance, the Sodom and Gomorrah story in the Bible, those were not evil, demonic, dark angels. Those are good angels of a good Lord, you see. So, who's doing is it like, is it God's angels who are destroying it, or is it some sort of like evil force that's against God and God can't seem to win?
Well, it's the people which are related to the fallen angels or the aliens which came and breeded with humans, and from the same bloodline they've been from all the way back in the Egypt days, which pretty much their main goal is to become God on earth and have dominion and control over everything, and pretty much rise the Antichrist and Lucifer and control and enslave the whole population of the world.
Okay, Petey, do you want to end the recording right now? Or before we do so, no, don't end it yet. Okay, I want to talk to Neil here, Technofan. I've known him since 1998. He's a really good friend of mine. He's sort of my webmaster when he's busy with it. Neil, I'm recording this conversation. We're talking about UFOs and aliens and crop circles and things like that, right? Now, I discussed it earlier in the recording that most people who talk about UFOs are called crazy, right? Like, because, that's just the way the government operates in a disinformation campaign. So if you try to rationally discuss aliens and UFOs, you're going to be ridiculed and called, like delusional or something, right? Like you belong in a tabloid or something. Now, I remember you, Neil, when you came to visit me, I believe that was like 2004, 2005 or so, you brought to me a book called something about Disclosure Project or the time, I can't remember what it was called. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, that was Contact Has Begun by Philip Cramp. He was an LA Times editor who had no previous writings or beliefs or anything or any beliefs whatsoever of UFOs, and he was claiming to have been abducted, and over 3 days was kind of indoctrinated, or actually allowed to, as a reporter would, be allowed to ask questions and get responses about the nature of extraterrestrials, how long they've been around, what their purposes are, how they operate, what their intentions are for in the past and the future.
Yeah, the main points I got of that book is that he sounds sincere, in writing, right? Like, it doesn't sound like a hoax or something, right? But at the same time, he said that it was written, I think, in 1998 or 99, and he said definitely by like 2002, 2003, the aliens would reveal themselves finally once and for all, and public people would be coming forward, and it would be a big hoopla, right? But that never happened, right? His predictions were all wrong, and it still hasn't happened to this day. So what's your take on that?
Well, he wrote a follow-up book. He said pretty much within, I think, a week after 9/11, he got visited a second time. This time he wasn't taken to their ship, but they sent one of the people that he knew, or one of the beings, came down disguised as a human and told him that because of those events, the plans that he had been given are now been put indefinitely on hold because we're not ready. We're not ready to be peaceful or cooperate or listen to such a message without reacting in a negative way, or, including not just listen to it, but actually, make contact with another species without causing enough, harm to ourselves or to our society and culture.
Yeah, we discussed this earlier. Now, do you think there are malicious aliens that are visiting the Earth? Now, we've discussed that. My take is I know confidently. For one thing, I know that we're being visited, right? That UFOs are real and all that kind of stuff. But I know for a fact that most of them are benign good guys, right? They don't mean any harm to us. And if they meant harm, they would have killed us a long time ago, like in the movie Independence Day, right? They had so many opportunities to do so, and if they're bad, why haven't they done anything yet? But how many of them are malicious? Like, these are the ones who abduct people and put them through painful medical experiments and all that. Those are commonly known as the Greys.
Yeah, I've heard stories of Greys, especially doing experiments on people involving reproduction and involving pain, and sometimes I've heard even sterility. But I've never actually heard of a confirmed story or anything where they've actually killed anybody. According to the aliens that contacted him, were supposedly more of a master race, and that they've been in space longer and millions of years, and they've reached a level called absolute intelligence, where evolutionary, they can't get more intelligence. They'd be a 10 out of 10, where the average person on Earth would be somewhere between a 2 or 3 out of 10, even though there's some individuals on our planet that may be a 6 out of 10. Eventually, intelligence will evolve to the point where a being could be no smarter, that they're awake constantly, and everything that they hear, they comprehend and learn, and they spend their whole lifetime, over 20,000 years long, of being constantly awake and experiencing things and learning, so they get to be incredibly knowledgeable. They do have a control system in their that beings that are too hostile or have negative intents or warlike are not allowed to go into space, but it's not done through hurting them. It's done usually through subtle tactics, like sabotaging their space program to the point where they may have ships that can go from planet to planet, but they'll insert people into their government and technology sectors and sabotage their science and technology to the point where they can no longer even put up a weather satellite that lasts for a few more minutes before it goes out, and therefore they're taken out of the picture of the ability to be a space-faring race until they can give another few hundred years to evolve culturally to the point where they're no longer going to cause harm or be warlike. So, under that guise, then the Greys operation are known about and approved of by the intergalactic or universal, coalition of alien beings, and it's basically they probably submitted a research project approval or whatever, got it reviewed and approved, and they're monitored, and their permission to do what they're doing could be taken away anytime. So, exactly what that is, I've been told that basically that they're a race that reproduces through, they've lost the ability to reproduce in a normal sexual manner, so they've been reproducing through cloning for a long time, but their genetic strain is lost, is weakened to the point where their race is So allowing them to have an interbreeding project with us both makes us smarter and more aware and more psychic, because they only communicate through psychic means and not verbal, or primarily through psychic means and not verbal. So by increasing they're getting help because their race is prevented from being going extinct, and our race is helped because they're putting genes that are increasing our intelligence and our awareness, empathic awareness. So overall, I guess it was been judged to something that helps both of us, even though a few individuals may have, gone through traumatic memories or experienced temporary physical harm or pain.
So do you follow the news, Neil, about UFOs? Like, do you ever go to UFO websites or crop circle websites or anything?
I do sometimes. It's not a major activity of mine. I believe that what they said of them, making the idea of the UFO's existence being pushed through the media and through popular circuits like television and movies, that the idea of aliens has been reduced to the point that we've become, more or less as a culture acceptant of the idea. And it gets to the point where 90% of the people, or 80% of the people are like, yeah, sure, I believe, so what? Then we may be ready for actual contact. And that's part of their agenda.
Yeah, as I said earlier, though, there seems to be a contradiction, or not a contradiction, but like a phenomenon where, like you said, like 90% of Americans that are polled believe in UFO.
You dropped the mic again, Daniel, I think.
This video has been brought to you by Daniel Eli, AntiProfit2012.com. Goodbye for now. Check out finalbookofdaniel.com too. It's a decade-old book, very profound. Free to read online. God bless you. Bye.